much safer. And we'll end up with the wire wheel buffer as well. But let's focus back over here to a bench grinder. I want to start with some lists, a list of don'ts, things not to do. Of course, one of the foremost ones is to avoid or not use gloves. The danger is when grinding small pieces, and of course you should use something this small, you should be using some locking pliers. We'll get to that. Danger is if you're grinding something small and you happen to get too close, the cloth will actually catch and pull you in to the stone, in between the tool rest and the stone, and it makes for a horrible day. You got flesh and bone and everything else. It's just not a good deal. So really, now gloves would be permissible over here on the wire wheel. Those are the whiskers are flying out, and your hands can maybe get a poke or two. But over here, that'll be different if you're far away from your work. Let's talk about locking pliers. Now, don't just use regular pliers. They've got a clamp. They've got a lock and grip. You can never hold it with a pair of channel locks or some general purpose pliers. And again, you're going to just grind something small with locking pliers. And of course, let the work or the pliers, whichever, rest on the tool rest. The stone is turning this direction, so it's going to push your work against the tool rest, which is much safer. Okay, so there's another tip. Okay, let's talk about where to grind and perhaps a little bit how to grind. Obviously, we'll grind on the face of the wheel. Avoid the side. And the danger is if we're grinding on the side and we put too much pressure on it, the wheel can crack and it might even come apart. And if this is rotating, and I believe most grinders rotate at approximately 12,000, 13,000 RPM, that's a lot of chance to, that kind of force to throw some chunks of wheel. Once it starts coming apart, I guess they really come apart, coming right at you. And that would be a pleasant day. Also, if you're grinding on the face, do so not too aggressively. Meaning, don't just jam the work into it, because that's when it can catch or crack and make a force and again crack the stone and making it unsafe. And though it may not fly apart while you're using it that time, it might do so the next time it starts up. Okay. Alrighty, another thing to be cautious of, because these wheels, generally speaking, are aluminum oxide. We don't want to grind soft materials such as brass or aluminum. Now, I don't know what aluminum oxide necessarily is, but it's good hard stuff. It is our general purpose grinding wheel. There are grinding wheels made of softer stone for grinding soft materials, but they're pretty rare. Give you an example of what grinding of soft materials do. If you look closely, you might want to focus in here, it'll start to load up the stone, okay? I actually ground a little bit of aluminum on this stone, and it actually covered or loaded, what we call loading up the stone, and filling all the pores. Well, now it won't cut anymore. And we'll talk about how to dress a stone later, because if that happens, and things happen, we can always get a stone dresser. And this, again, will rest on the tool rest, and we'll actually move stone material. It's a little noisy, but it's worth it. Chew your stone back up and clean it off, or whatever the case is. Okay. Now, one last thing that's kind of tempting for some. After you turn the power off, don't stop the stone with your work or a piece of metal or something. When things start slowing down, dynamics change. And again, something could get caught or wedged, and that's not good. Just turn the power off and let it power down all on its own. Walk away. Okay. Okay, so some things to do. New list. Some things to do. The tool rest. We have to keep this within about 1/8 of an inch. Now, in metric terms, that would be about 3 millimeters. And this tool rest, of course, is adjustable. And if I did dress the stone, of course, I could remove material and make the stone smaller. But I can adjust it here. If I loosen that bolt there, I can tilt it. So I'm going to bring this up a little bit close, pull it back just a whisker. So all that thing's about the thickness of, say, about a nickel or maybe as thin as a dime, okay, and snug that up. That's the tool rest. A spark arrestor, sometimes they are adjustable. These are not, and this is an old grinder. I guess they didn't think of that or something, but the idea of a spark arrestor is the things we do grind, and some of the sparks can hit here instead of coming out at us. They'll hit here and maybe get flashed off to the side. Spark arrestor, generally, most folks would say, well, let's go 1/4 inch, which again, in the metric world, that'd be about, what, 6 millimeters, 5 or 6 millimeters, okay? So there's a tool rest, a spark arrestor. Where we talk about, do use locking pliers when grinding something small. As we previously pointed out, it gets hot, you're going to burn yourself, it's not safe. When you're grinding, say, a chisel, keep it cool. Just have a cup of water here, and we're going to keep it cool. Every now and then just dip it. If the edge ever gets a blue color to it, it's lost its temper, and that edge will disappear as soon as you start striking your hand or whatever you're trying to cut. And we'll demonstrate this in just a moment. Okay? When grinding something you want to sharpen up, again, I would suggest you go this direction so the stone is going to grind towards the wire, towards your sharp edge. Not like this. I don't want to get wedged between here for one. But number two, if you grind this direction, it actually forms on the edge out here what's called a wire burr, a wire edge. And in order to minimize that or remove that, just eliminate that whole possibility if you grind towards it and flip it over and grind the other side. That'll make for a sharper, better edge without that little wire edge. Okay. I'm going to grind here now, and they'll come over, we'll buff something, and I think that will take care of our grinding safety. So first and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and just turn the power. You know, these should be bolted down, but to find a quiet place, I had to take them off and just rest them on this bench, so please don't follow my example. These should be bolted down to a bench, but I think my light demonstration here might be sufficient. So let's go ahead. We're okay here, and let's grind. See if that shiny area is where I've been grinding. I'm trying to flatten it and make it truer. We'll keep it cool. And I can grind the other side. That's looking a little better. Okay, I think you get the idea. Many chisels, it's recommended about a 60-degree taper. I don't have a little gauge with me today, but 60 allows me to get in and get underneath something a little better than, say, a 90-degree angle. Okay? Let's talk about the spark test. If you're uncertain, you found something old, you're uncertain what it's made out of, this is called the spark test. If you grind and it throws a spark, it's metal, and you can use it on these types of grinding wheels, aluminum oxide. I'm going to just grind off. Notice my gloves are off. I'm far away. I don't need pliers on this. I'm far enough away. Then I remove some of the sharp edge. I can spend more time on it. Let's say I wasn't sure what something like this really was. Go ahead and try it. There's no spark. Therefore, it fails the spark test. It must be a soft material I should not use. Now, I love brass drifts, and they get mushroomed. But don't use a grinder to take off the mushroom. Kind of figure out some other way. A mushroom on a chisel, or in this case a punch, is a good thing to keep trimmed down, because they've been known to, after they get big enough, they mushroom over enough, you pick it up, that chunk can go fly somewhere. So keep your mushroom edges groomed down. And that ought to work. Okay?